welcome to Beware of Spoilers. I am Adam. So, a new Star Wars book came out. I know it's been a while since we covered a new Star Wars book, but, new Star Wars books are always kind of interesting, because a lot of times they add additional context, and a lot of times, it's very rare, actually, that you get a Star Wars book that's written by someone who is directly involved, and that's not to say that this new one is written by someone who is directly involved with, the sequel trilogy or anything like that. But what we got here is we have a new book called Shadow of the Sith, or Shadows of the Sith, or some bullshit like that. And I'm going through this book, and it's pretty good. It feels a lot like Zahn's Heir to the Empire. And that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. He does say salvo a lot less than Zahn does, and there's a lot less fingering than in Zahn's book. I don't know if you noticed that, because if you listen to Zahn's book in quick succession, which is what I did, I listened to Heir to the Empire, and then Dark Force Rising, and then Last Command, and then Thrawn, and then the other two Thrawn books, and then I started immediately on Ascendancy, and it's man, a lot of fingering. He uses fingered as a verb way too much. And anyway, and he uses salvo a lot. That's the other thing you'll be able to tell when you watch this, is that when you listen to that salvo, which I understand that it works for what they're doing, but alright, it gets boring. But this new book is set about 13 years before The Force Awakens. And it's about Lando looking for his daughter who's been kidnapped. It's about all of the little nuancy, maybe nitpicky things from the sequels that don't exactly make a ton of sense, because the sequels are kind of written as if it's already in progress and you're the jackass for not knowing what's going on. That's what it's kind of written like, and I think that's kind of a problem. If you go back and watch The Force Awakens, that first scene that happens between Max von Sydow's Lord Santeca, whatever the fuck his name is, and then the other one, and Kylo Ren. It's okay, these two know each other. Lord Santeca is obviously someone important, even though his name is only said in the credits, but there's very little information about what this is. Now, the High Republic has kind of shed some light on the Santeca family, going back hundreds of years, where they talk about how his, great-grandmother or something like that, or probably his grandmother, because he's a billion in fucking Force Awakens, but, she was captured by the Nihil and used to map out star routes, so that way they could, or hyperspace lanes, so that way they could travel through hyperspace, and, in one of them especially, they used her abilities to, they used her abilities to, this is in the first one, The Light of the Jedi, they used her abilities to know where the ship that got broken up in hyperspace, the Legacy Run, was going to, where the parts were going to come out of hyperspace and then end up all over the galaxy. That was their big thing. But they were using her to map out hyperspace lanes safely that the Republic hadn't figured out yet. So it's kind of interesting in that regard. It is kind of, interesting to see that. And then what we get with him is that we get to see his explanation as to, learning how to force project. Luke learns how to force project from Lars Santeca because he isn't a Jedi, but he's seeped in the Force. So that explanation is kind of cool. And that expansion of the character is kind of cool. And I think that him being involved with the search for Jedi temples is also what kind of puts him there, and all of that. And I think, had Episode 7 not been The Force Awakens, had Episodes 7 and 8 been merged into one movie, where in that case you can cut out all the stuff on Starkiller Base, you can cut all the stuff on, on Canto Bight, get rid of all of that, and you just put in, you just put in, Rey leaving Jakku, getting to the Rebels being attacked by the First Order, them retreating from the First Order, and then trying to escape the First Order, all of that, and then ending up on Crate with Luke, and then Rey being trained by Luke. It'd probably be 3 hours, but that would probably flow a lot better than what actually happened. And I think that if you do that, if you do all of that, and make this Episode 7, the sequels work a lot better. Now, when I was texting someone about it yesterday, they said it's very much them trying to fit puzzle pieces together in the aftermath. They're cutting the puzzle pieces to fit the shape. And that is very true. I'm not saying that this book is not an exercise in how much we can, retcon, but that's been a lot of books of the Disney era. Has been a lot of, we have to retcon this needs to be fixed, look at look at Victory's Price, the Last Alphabet Squadron novel, which is very much trying to rectify how does Operation Cinder, in which the Emperor, initially when we're introduced to it in Battlefront 2, the Emperor is trying to just alright, well, I win, okay, we're gonna do that. We're gonna destroy all these planets, fuck you, I'm out, and all of you are fucked. Good day. Now, in that regard, that makes sense, and that's how it's always been portrayed, is that death of the Emperor, this happens next, we have to go and do that. Problem is, in a world where the Emperor survived, it makes no sense. Why is it that the Emperor is alright, go fuck yourself, I'm going to go and, I'm going to take a service road, because I do not want to use that stretch. Why is it that the Emperor is okay, well, I'm going to destroy everything, if he is not dead, if he's still alive and he still needs to contain power? So Victory's Price is an exercise in being well, here's kind of an explanation as to how that works, where it's alright, he, in an effort to stay in power, or to keep the Empire, there, they launched this initiative where it would spread the Rebel Alliance thin enough, where they could amass a Jakku, where the Empire can amass a Jakku, and then when the Empire does amass a Jakku, that should be it'll lure the Rebel Alliance there, and then they can just be wiped out once and for all. It's not a terrible plan, but it is contingent on the Empire winning at Jakku, which they did not. And I think that this book does a lot to contextualize, okay, so what's going on with the Empire, what's going on with, what's going on with the Republic, how is all of this working, and all of that. And I feel had this come first, and had we gotten this going into it, that would make a lot more sense. Plus the idea that, we're introducing this and we're starting episode 7 is going to launch with, this is Exegol. Exegol exists. Vader knew of Exegol. And then you can kind of work in, the fall of Kylo Ren into this. If this was a movie and we're not going to do this direct book, I would work in the fall of Kylo Ren into the movie. So that way in the next one we have Kylo Ren as an adult and, wearing the mask and all of that. Like, there are ways to have done this that would have made the sequels work better, and then in that way, Episode 9 then becomes a, Episode 9, after all of that, with this new layout, becomes a, ends up better. Which, okay, I think that, maybe Episode 9 should have just not been what it was. But in the same way that, we have to deal the cards where we have to, we play with the cards we're dealt, sorry about that, we had a little bit of turbulence there. But here's the thing, in a world where, we're playing with the cards we're dealt, and I think that, one of my favorite books recently has been the Padme books. The Queen's Peril, Queen's whatever. The second one of those completely reframes Phantom Menace. And makes it better in the process. And because Phantom Menace is got that treatment, it's like, well, why shouldn't we give that same treatment to Episode 9, or The Rise of Skywalker? And look, exploring some of Rey's backstory, exploring Rey's parents, exploring that, it's all interesting. And it's all kind of cool to look into that and to see how these, stories play out against each other. Do I want to see, more of this? I do. I want to see more of these books set between and really what we're ending up with here is the sequels were not good. And I think that's the thing we kind of have to reckon with. The Last Jedi is the best of the sequel movies. But the problem with it is if you watch that, if you watch that movie, the detour onto Canto Bight is kind of pointless, even within the context of the movie. Yeah, it adds some extra stuff, but they would have been better off just going right to the Imperial ship and going from there rather than going to Canto Bight to add context to the galaxy and all of that. But whatever. I mean, look, it's the best of them. I've stood by Luke not going to Crate, because I do love that, him going there and that confrontation with Kylo Ren is probably the best way to do that, because it is the greatest example, the ultimate example of Yoda's teachings, that the Force is not a weapon for positive or for negative. The Force is just the Force, It is pacifism in its purest form, where he doesn't fight, he doesn't go and kill Kylo Ren, he goes there and he stalls. He uses the Force to stall, and it's such a great moment. I feel like that movie has a few issues, but it's definitely the best of the three. But The Force Awakens, I remember seeing it, and I think the episode is up on Beware of Spoilers, where me and Peter went to go see it opening night, and that movie it had been so long since there was a good Star Wars movie. So doing this and being okay, we're gonna tell this awesome story, with all this stuff, and it's oh, this is really cool, this is really good, I love this, and then you watch it a few more times, and you're oh, I've seen this before. This is just A New Hope again, identically. And I think okay, great, I totally get why that needed to happen. I understand the thought process behind it. All of that makes perfect sense to me. I just think the problem is, there's a lot that of context for these movies that wasn't really given. And I think expanding the text for them, expanding the context for them and putting in new, like, okay, so here is some more information you didn't have. This is important because X, Y, and Z. You have to, like, it'll prop it up a little bit. But is it any different from the prequels doing the same thing with the Clone Wars and with, you know, these other books that are doing basically the same function, but with, you know, the Clone Wars, with episodes 1, 2, and 3? It isn't. It's the exact same thing, where those movies retroactively got better because we had additional context added in the expanded universe. I think that doing that for the sequels is probably the best way to handle it. I think I want to see an exploration more into the, I'm sure, I think there's a comic that did do this, the Fall of Kylo Ren, the Attack on the Jedi Temple, you know, I want to see further exploration into, I understand that Snoke is just a failed clone of what's his name? Of Palpatine. I understand that, but I want to see Snoke become an entity unto himself. That's what I want to see. And I don't think that, you know, that would be cool to see explored too. And I want to see what happens after. I want to see how the galaxy reacts to this ending, to the ending that was in that. Because, like, look, I mean, they did that with, you know, and I think that was the kind of the smart thing with the expanded universe, was that the original Star Wars when episode 6 came out in 1984, when that movie came out, it ends on kind of a fairy tale note. Especially when they did the recut of the ending, where they added in scenes of, like, Naboo celebrating and Coruscant celebrating, and all this other stuff because they defeated the Empire. It's a great thought, but not realistic. Granted, it's also a movie about space wizards with laser swords, but and also to clarify for those who may be confused, it's not a documentary, but, like, the idea that killing the Emperor, destroying Second Death Star, Vader's death, all of that, and then it's like, okay, so we did all of that, now okay, we're done. Galaxy saved. You're welcome, Galaxy. Like, that always never really sat right with me, as a viewer. I think that, you know, looking at it kind of broadly, I think that, like, expanding it out and laying out, laying out that, like, no, the galaxy, look, it was a good first step, and it was a major victory and a turning point in the Galactic Civil War, but the idea is, like, there's still a lot that needs to be done. There's setting up a new government, like, which is not an easy thing to do. There is, like, the Empire is still out there. Like, you destroyed some of the Empire, but the rest of it's still out there, and you may have them on their heels, but it is a problem that needs to be resolved. And I think that idea has always been kind of good. I do want to see the remnants of the First Order be handled in this, you know, in this. I want to see where that goes, what does Rey do, you know, all of that. Because even the new one has kind of that fairy tale ending, where it's like, okay, we destroyed the Emperor again, and his fleet got destroyed again, and, well, now what? And it's like, well, there's still some ships out there. Like, if I remember correctly, like, there was a ship that went over to Kashimi, which is, if I remember correctly, the planet where the Red Power Ranger lives. Whatever the fuck her name was. Zori Bliss. And Babu Frik lived there too. And, like there was the one in orbit there. Can we like can we find out what happened on that? It would be interesting to see how that plays out, and see what happens from there. Because really, the only real there's been one real expanded universe novel that dealt in that dealt in like that era, and that was the Rebellion book, Rebel Reborn, or some bullshit like that, or something like that, which is where they're trying to get they're trying to go to Lothal to get the Twi'leks on board with whatever nonsense they're trying to do next. Like, it's an interesting approach that I don't think really has been addressed so far. I want to see this time period kind of explored a little bit more. I want to see a little more to it. But unfortunately, that doesn't seem likely in the impending future. But look, I dig it. I can see what they're doing. I like what they're trying. I would just like to see them explore it a little bit more and be like, okay, so here's what we're going with, here's what's happening. And I think, too, the galaxy is merging. I think it is a merge of two galaxies, so that's the only way I can really rectify wild space and the unknown regions being what they are. Which I think that would make the most sense if there's a second galaxy merging in, which means we may get a war with the Chiss Ascendancy. See, that's what I would do to be the next big thing after, is that it's like we need to do something to unite against, to unite and move past the First Order, is it's going to be the invasion of the Chiss Ascendancy. Otherwise, all these fucking Thrawn books have been for nothing, and I don't need to know more about the Chiss Ascendancy, unless they're coming in to invade the regular galaxy. But on that note, we will wrap up there for today. Tomorrow, the finale of Miss Marvel, because that came out today, so I will be watching that tonight. Something happened there that is not going to sit well with some people, I can tell you that much right now. But more on that tonight, when we see how this all plays out. I'm curious to see the reaction to this latest thing they decided to do. Oh boy, that is certainly gonna be something. So on that note, until then, have a great rest of your week.